welcome. Also, don't forget the 21st, 22nd, 23rd of January is Revival with Brother Coley Reese. And we also have the youth thingy with all of the initials that I can't remember. February the 11th, is that correct, Ashton? 11th? So let me know if you're going with us on that. And we're going to start Bible study. I'm so excited about this particular Bible study. So God has a way of confirming things with me, and they tend to always be consistent. So he will put something in my heart, in my mind, and then it seems to be confirmed over and over and over again. And then whenever he gives me the okay to teach it, preach it, whatever I do, there is always a minister that I respect, I love to listen to, and they really speak to me, always has something almost immediately that is along the same lines. And if I'm off on a wild rabbit chase and I'm the only person out there and none of the ministers I respect have said anything even remotely close to that, I'm always a little bit hesitant. But this confirmed itself over and over and over and over again. Oh, this is fun. So I'm actually watching my phone, so y'all know, because tonight we are using the same software to stream to Facebook Family as we are on YouTube. And that's the first time that we've done that. And I have seen so many hilarious bloopers where the captioning tried to put the words that they thought the person was saying. And I just realized that captions are on. So if there is a word that comes out that is not English, I may or may not have said it. I don't know. So we'll go with faith on that one. But it's okay because it's only Facebook Family seeing it. It's a private video, so hopefully it won't humiliate the whole church. I've already had rabbis look at me strange. From what? Oh, well. Yeah, so we'll see where it goes from this. So before Christmas, we had just gotten into 1 Kings. And we kind of stopped right there to kind of sidetrack and go along our Christmas Bible studies. But right before we did that, we learned about the very beginning of the reign of Solomon. David has died. Solomon had to go in and do some house cleaning, get rid of some people, sort things out. Okay, I'm not going to rabbit trail. But he had taken all of his inexperience and insecurity to God. Now, a lot of times people they may realize their insecurities and then they're like, oh, I am so insecure in that area. And that is my insecurity, and I'm going to hold on to it until Jesus comes. And I'm going to pet it, and I'm going to love it, and I'm going to nurture that insecurity because that is what makes me who I am. That seems to be the habit of humanity. And it's wrong. It's not the way it should be. Okay? God loves it when we take things to him. Everything, anything, all the stuff. So insecurities along with successes. He doesn't want you just for what you do well. He wants you to take what you don't do well and give it to him so that he can help you to do it well. That's good. That was worth the whole night right there. All right. So Solomon is credited with writing 3 books. Anybody know what they are? Not everybody at once. Song of Solomon, Ecclesiastes, and Nicolay, you know the third one? She's like, and you said Ecclesiastes, her hand went down because that was her answer. Nope. So the other one is Proverbs. And he didn't actually write all of Proverbs, he gathered Proverbs. So he traveled all over the place, and whenever he came into a place and there was this incredible, deep, whatever, proverb, he was like, ooh, I want that. And so he gathered them and put them in a book. That's why some of our Proverbs sound a lot like Confucius, or they sound a lot like another philosopher somewhere that you might hear, because they were gathered in wisdom and put together. All right. So those are the 3 books that King Solomon wrote, or that is accredited to him. And so we learn wisdom from these, from his successes, the things that he did well. We also learn wisdom from what not to do. The oopses. yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that. Or I've really messed up. Anybody got a book of I really messed ups? Yeah. Yes. So Proverbs is full of godly wisdom. And the whole premise of Proverbs is to seek godly wisdom. Look out for wisdom. Lean not into your own understanding. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart. I forgot that was a verse that I had written. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart and lean not into your own understanding. That is one that's in Proverbs. So living by God's wisdom instead of your own is called the fear of the Lord. And like in the book's opening paragraph, that's where it starts with Proverbs 1 and 7. But Ecclesiastes is also written by Solomon. And it cracks me up. When Solomon writes Ecclesiastes, he's at the end of his life. He has over 700 wives, 300 concubines. He knows he's messed up. He offers some very sobering reflections. He says, life is hevel, smoke, vapor. Bleh. Like, he is literally the pout fish. It's just bleh. Everything. He says that life is just smoke. It's unpredictable. It's uncontrollable. You can't tell. Once smoke is out, it is just wherever it wants to go. You can't control it. You can't contain it. And he says, vanity of vanities, saith the preacher, vanity of vanities. All is vanity. That's a quote from Ecclesiastes. And in vanity is not like, look how good I look. It is like, it's just smoke. There's nothing attainable there. Worthless. So he says that everything is vanity. And let me just be very honest with you. If you're down in the dumps, don't read Ecclesiastes. It is not the book for you. It is something that you want to read when you're on the mountaintop and you're looking for wisdom. Don't read it when you're depressed, because it's just going to confirm everything. In fact, there's one part where it talks about living out the rest of your miserable days with the wife of your youth. So you can read that two different ways. You can say the rest of your miserable days, at least you're going to have the wife of your youth. Or you're stuck with her. Deal with it. It is all downhill from here. You might as well just survive. And that's kind of the feeling behind Ecclesiastes. I'm going to go ahead and play this video. Pastor and I sometimes refer to the spirit of Eeyore. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Eeyore, but I'm going to share with you what the spirit of Eeyore looks like.
Just my luck. A heffalump, leering at his lunch.
Eeyore, I'm not a heffalump.
Doesn't matter anyway. Headed for the waterfall. I'll be gone soon.
Oh no, not the waterfall. Swim!
Not that anyone will notice.
Swim!
Just have to go with the flow.
Don't worry.
I'm not. Can't change the inevitable.
Mustn't give up, Eeyore. I'll save you.
We'll see.
Oh, yes, of course. I've grown up, haven't I? Oh, Eeyore.
Laughing at my misfortune, just like a heffalump.
Hello, Eeyore.
Hello, heffalump.
Not a heffalump. I'm Christopher Robin. Do you remember I used to try and cheer you up?
I don't remember being cheery.
I don't remember being cheery. And that is the classic representation of the spirit of Eeyore. It's all inevitable anyway. The rapids are going to get me. I'm headed for the waterfall. Here I go. Not that it matters. Nobody will miss me anyway. Oh, it's just my lot in life. This is the spirit of Eeyore. And it's really a mindset. And I've met Eeyore in person. Have you met Eeyore in person? I have. Like, it's funny. The longer they inhabit this spirit, the more they start to look like Eeyore. And then their tail falls off. So Eeyore is a pin the tail on the donkey. He was always losing his tail, just to clarify that. Okay. So anyway, but Song of Solomon is completely opposite. It's written at the beginning of his life, before he had had 700 wives. This was at the first of 700 wives. So this was before wisdom went away. And we're going to kind of focus on that just a little bit. So, Song of Solomon is actually, go ahead and mute computer if you haven't, because I can hear humming. It may be a motorcycle. The Song of Solomon is one of the most disputed and difficult books to understand. How many here have actually read all the way through Song of Solomon? How many of you skirted through it, listening to it on a Bible app, and you're like, that's weird? Uh-huh. So when you try to read it, it's a little bit confusing because there's a lot going on. A lot. So at one point, it looked like the Song of Solomon wasn't even going to make it in the Bible. Can you believe that? Like, there were so many different objections to it, mainly because it was explicit. And it's very frank about sexual love. And so people were like, whoa, we can't put that in the Bible. Like, kids are going to have this. They can't read this stuff. But the Jews always revered this book. It wasn't just poetry. It wasn't just something romantic. It was different than that. And they still read it every year during one very important feast. Do y'all have any idea what that might be? What feast that is? Celebration? It'll surprise you. One we mention all the time. Starts with pass and ends with over. That's right. Passover. Every year at Passover, the Jews will come together. They will read out loud in the assembly of whatever in front of everybody. They will read the book of the Song of Solomon. Why? Not for entertainment, but because it paints a picture of an engagement, a wedding, and a marriage. Because Israel was engaged to Jehovah on the night of the Passover. When he delivered them from Egypt, he became engaged. It was a proposal. They even drank and ate of the marriage supper, what's that called? Proposal supper. I can't think of what it's called. They ate and drank of that. And then when he delivered them from Egypt, and then they were married to him when they accepted the law. Whenever Jesus gave the 10 Commandments, and Moses went down and he said, will you do this? And they said, we will follow the Lord our God. We will serve him and no other gods. What they're saying is, I, children of Israel, take this God to have and to hold till death do us part. It was a marriage ceremony. It was a covenant. For the record, marriage is a covenant. It's not a contract, just like this was a covenant between the children of Israel and God Almighty. So she was married to Jehovah on Pentecost, or Shavuot, or the Feast of First Fruits, is what Pentecost was in the Old Testament. We get Pentecost in the future when we rename it, and we don't rename it, it's translated. So anyway, the nation accepted this covenant, the 10 Commandments, at Mount Sinai. That's when they became married. So if you think about this, the Jewish people see this book as being something from one of their greatest kings, expressing love and marriage, the courtship of the bride, and then the joining in the union. So it's pretty awesome. So right before the children of Israel go into the promised land, okay, right before, in Deuteronomy chapter 7, verses 6 through 9, God is telling the people through Moses, for thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy God. Okay, unto, which means that you belong to God. You are separated. You are no longer out there flirting with other nations. You are his. For the Lord thy God hath chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, not to be shared, above all people that are upon the face of the earth. This is a unique covenant. The Lord did not set his love upon you, nor choose you because you were more in number than any people. For you are the fewest of all people. But because the Lord loved you, and because he would keep the oath which he has sworn unto your fathers, hath the Lord brought you out with a mighty hand, and redeemed you out of the house of the bondmen, from the hand of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Now therefore that the Lord thy God, he is God, and faithful, God which keepeth covenant and mercy with them that love him and keep his commandment to 1,000 generations. All right. So we see this as an allegory or a deeper meaning between the love of Christ and his church, his bride. That's us. Yes? Mm-hmm. All right. So, despite many debates and details, I can honestly tell you that when I first read Song of Solomon, everybody was like, oh, it's the story of Solomon and his love for this girl. My first response when I read it was like, no, it's not. It can't be. Because this story is about a shepherd and just a girl out in the middle of nowhere. That doesn't fit Solomon's life. Solomon was born in a kingdom. He was born to be a king. How could he have gone through this whole story? But more study into it, I think it very possibly was Solomon. And even if the story itself didn't exactly happen, the story was from Solomon. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's where we're going. So because this book is ancient Eastern poetry, it doesn't follow a clear thought progression. It doesn't follow like a linear thing. You know how sometimes in a story you start when they're this age and then they grow older and then you end when they're old and happily ever after. That's not how this particular book goes. It's all out of whack. It's kind of crazy. It's jumping back and forth. And that makes it really hard to understand who's talking and who's saying what. But I'm going to try to help you with that. So this one, it flows back and forth between various speakers. And it's shifting from scene to scene without much of a storyline. It's kind of everywhere. So it circles back on itself. You know, like somebody we know, we're going to circle back to that. Well, that's what Song of Solomon does constantly. And it even has a couple of times where there's a dream sequence. So it shifts off into this time when this young lady is like, she's having this horrible dream that her beloved has left her. At one point, she's so sleepy, and she can hear her beloved. He's standing at the door, and he's knocking, and it's raining outside. He's like, I am soaking wet. I'm out here drowning. Open the door. And she said, my heart wanted to open to him, but I was so sleepy, I couldn't even get my eyes to open. And then she's like, oh, no, what have I done? And she jumps up, and she runs through the cities. Have you seen my beloved? He came to me, and I was so sleepy, I didn't realize that I couldn't wake up, but now he's gone. And it's this whole source of fear in this dream. It goes without saying that the metaphors that are used by the bride and the bridegroom can't be taken literally. Like I said, if somebody told you that your net looked like a tower, you'd be like, I'll just take you down now, right? So when you look at it in context, and you know the timing, and you know the culture, it makes a lot of difference. One of them is when he calls her the horse in Pharaoh's, that carries Pharaoh's chariot or whatever. Well, that sounds really tacky. Yeah. Horse? Nag? But it was different when you see Pharaoh's horses and how they would have been decked out, and they would have been gorgeous. And most of the time they would have been guys. So you put a female beautiful horse in the middle of this corral with all of these guy horses, and they're going to be like, hey, what's that? Well, when you say that, that makes a difference. Like, she walks in the room and everybody notices. Right. So it kind of puts it into context a little bit there. Scholars usually can determine who is speaking in this. I listen to a Bible app that reads the Bible, and whenever they get to the Song of Solomon, they switch it up, and the lady reads her part and the guy reads his, and it makes a whole lot more sense, like a whole lot more sense. And there's still some conjecture and stuff on that, but Hebrew pronouns are masculine or feminine. They're singular and they're plural. So most translations kind of add to the scripture in that way. So let me give you an example of that. Whenever you say spouse in Spanish, like this is my spouse, there's not really a word for spouse. It's either esposo or esposa. I would be with an A because I'm feminine. The end of it would be an O if it were male. So you have to separate it into male or female. And that's kind of how this is. The King James Version, if you read your King James Version Bible, it didn't even try. It didn't even try. It just gave you the thing. So that was 410 years ago. And they are not sure in every case who is speaking, but most of it is pretty clear. So that's why translations differ if you go to different speakers or different Bibles. The Message Bible, I don't know what it's doing. I can't even promise that that's G-rated. I don't know. Just don't read that one. But the rest of them, it describes different sections. There's 3 different sections in this book. Okay, and I'm just giving you the layout tonight. We'll get into the good juicy stuff next week. But tonight I'm just going to give you the overview. The 3 sections described in the Song of Solomon are the bride and the bridegroom in their engagement, like it's supposed to be, where the engagement comes first. Engagement. The second is the wedding, and the 3rd section is the marriage. Makes sense, doesn't it? So these sections are separated by the very haunting dreams, the creepy ones, that are experienced by the bride. And both of them, she is afraid that her beloved has left her. But taken as a whole, this is a beautiful portrait of marriage. If you want to put it up there, Nick, in our sections, this is how it goes. We leave in our engagement. We're leaving. That's in chapter 1 there. Chapter 3, there's a dream. And then in chapter 3 to 5, there's a wedding. And that's where they're cleaving to each other. And then from chapter 5, there's another dream. And then chapter 5, verse 2 through 8:14, they're weaving their lives together. And that's the end of Song of Solomon. It's not a very long book, but that's the basic outline of it. Now, we talked about how the author of this book is Solomon, right? He's mentioned 7 times by name. Pretty sure it's him. This is Solomon, the son of David, the 3rd king, the wisest and wealthiest man who ever lived. He actually reigned during the golden age of Israel. So David had a lot of fighting going on, but Solomon brought peace. Now, later on, he did that by marrying in these contracts to these other nations, and it had peace, but it killed him, took down his own morality. But we're not there yet. During his time is when the temple is built. This is a huge, glorious structure. Like, it has all of the fame and the wealth. It is gorgeous, beautiful. In fact, there is still there's a Hebrew saying even today that says, if you never saw the Temple of Solomon, you've never seen a beautiful building. Wow. That's everything compared to it. So people from distant nations would travel to Israel just to hear Solomon's wisdom and see his wealth for himself. There's even a story of the princess, or the queen of Persia, was it? That goes to see him. Was it Persia? Is that right? Sheba? Oh, Queen of Sheba? Yeah. Sheba. Yeah, Persia's wise men. Sheba goes to see him, and she's like, I cannot even believe this. Like, everything, I was told of your wisdom, I was told of your wealth, but she actually says, the half was never told to me. And I immediately heard, and the half has never yet been told. It is joy unspeakable. That's the only time I've ever heard that. So I was like, it is joy. All right, there it is. So it's biblical. All right, bringing it back home. Sorry. So during his lifetime, Solomon collected over 3,000 wise sayings. That's a lot. And that's in your Bible. You can read that. And he shared with his subjects all of these wisdom pieces that he had gathered that had been spoken to him and that he shared. But the book of Proverbs only contains, 150 or 100? I don't even know. I didn't look at it. But it's a few hundred Proverbs. So it's nowhere near all the ones that he's grabbed. It's just some of them. I guess the most important ones. But he also wrote 1,005 songs. Now David, his father, was known for writing poetry. Solomon also wrote poetry or songs. Over 1,000 of them, but only one made it in the Bible. Now, I was listening to a documentary the other day about Nebuchadnezzar, I believe it was. Maybe, possibly, I think it was. And he related himself as the King of Kings. He was the most kingliest of all kings, the King of Kings. And I thought, nope, that title's taken. Pick another one. Yeah. Can't have that one. But that is called an idiom. It is the top of the top, the creme de la creme. It is the best. You hear that a lot in the Bible, like the Holy of Holies. You have a holy place, but then there's the Holy of Holies. The Song of Songs is the same thing. It's like King of Kings and Lord of Lords. It indicates this is the greatest of all songs. Everyone knows about Solomon's failures in his life, when he married all these wives and he established peaceful relationships and profitable political relations with other countries. But in doing so, he loses out with God. It says that his wives turned his heart away from God.
Right.
But before that, he wrote the Song of All Songs. So this book predates all of the backsliding. That's why we're starting it now instead of going through Kings. It's all written in his younger years, and it tells the story of his first true love. Now, I was talking to Pastor about this, and I said, isn't it amazing that at the beginning of Solomon's life, he wrote about his first true love, and his heart was tender, and there is such a desire to be closer to God, and he has got, everything's going for him. I mean, like, you can literally see him skipping through the tulips in the fields. I mean, it's just, he's Twitter-pated. Birds are singing, the clouds are blue, it's just beautiful weather outside, everything's great. Oh, we may go to war, but that's okay. I'm in love. You can just see little cupids flying around. And then at the end of his life, vanity. Yeah. Live the rest of your miserable life with the wife of your youth. Take that however you want to. What happened in between?
He lost everything. He got his mind on the women.
And he's got his mind on the women. Yep, that's the root of all evil. The truth is, at some point, his wisdom went from godly wisdom to Solomon wisdom. Mm-hmm. And the joy dropped. And the pressures of the world came in because his sight started going away from his first true love. Yep. Not just his first wife as in a true love, but his love for God, his desire to be like him. You can't have a heart for God and be sold out and madly in love with him and allow idols to come in.
Right.
God is a jealous God, but you know, more than that, we ought to be jealous for him.
Right.
Yeah, that's right.
We ought to have such a desire for him to see us that we get away anything else that's distracting. Anything else that might get our attention away, as much as for God to look at us and say, well, why are you splitting your, why are you focusing on all that?
That's right.
So, a couple of weeks ago, we were reminded of this beautiful garden that God had planted and put his creation in. He had made this perfect place, this paradise, so he could dwell with Adam and Eve, his creations. And he's surrounded by beauty and provision. But sin separated man from God, and the thorns and the thistles began to grow. But we know that it's God's desire to dwell with his people again one day in paradise. Right? This time it'll be in heaven. There's a lot of parallels to heaven and the Garden of Eden. 1 Kings 4:25 says, and Judah and Israel dwell safely. And it's talking about in the reign of King Solomon. Every man under his own vine and under his fig tree, from Dan even to Beersheba, all the days of Solomon. Isn't that an odd statement? That every man lives under his vine and under his fig tree? That's a little bit weird, huh? That doesn't mean their houses were made out of those things. That meant that the land was plentiful. It meant that the places had been returned to a garden-like state. It was no longer all thorns and thistles. After all of these years, they had finally started maintaining the land and bringing it back to its beauty, like it was in the Garden of Eden. Almost like the nation of Israel had turned into one giant garden again. It was a big paradise. And it really did. During the reign of King Solomon, there are so many historical writings that confirm that the gardens were beautiful and everybody had plenty and all that. And nowhere in Scripture are there as many references to nature as there are in the Song of Solomon, or the Song of Songs. He was a student of architecture, yes, but he was also a student of nature. And you can tell that he loved nature and the way that God had created the earth in a way that was conducive to man's needs in his writing. 1 Kings 4:33 says, and he spake of the trees, from the cedar tree that is in Lebanon, even unto the hyssop that bringeth out of the wall. He spaketh also of beasts and of fowl and of creeping things. and of the fishes. He was acutely aware of his surroundings and what God had provided and the beauty in it. 1 Kings 3:9 says, "Give therefore thy servant an understanding heart to judge thy people, that I may discern between good and bad. For who is able to judge this thy so great a people?" Solomon's heart was so open and understanding that God had placed him there to take care of his people. I can't even imagine the depth of understanding that he had to be responsible. Sometimes it's overwhelming just to think of your own kids. Like, you are responsible for keeping these little people alive. And not just alive, but growing and healthy and where they're not a drag on society. You know, you got to create something there that's beneficial. Yeah. Imagine having a whole kingdom. Be eye-opening, wouldn't it? Pastor's like, oh Lord. When you're responsible for a church, and then you think of the whole kingdom. Whew. I don't know. But Solomon's prayer was to rule with God's wisdom. And that's how it began early on. It really is. He reversed the failure of Adam and Eve, and his choice actually led to abundance for everyone. His wisdom is what created the provision for the people. In Solomon's day, every man sat under his own fig tree or fruit tree. It was like the Garden of Eden all over again, at least for a little while. So during the early days of Solomon's reign, he's desperately seeking God's heart like his father did. And he's beginning to understand the love of God in an amazing way. He said in Song of Solomon 8:6-7, "Set me as a seal upon thine heart, as a seal upon thine arm. For love is as strong as death. Jealousy is cruel as the grave. The coals thereof are coals of fire, which hath a vehement flame. Many waters cannot quench love, neither can the floods drown it. If a man would give all the substance of his house for love, it would utterly be contemned, which means despised, basically. There is no way to describe the power of love. In the New Testament, you see that kind of mirrored when it says, neither hell nor death nor grave nor what is it? I don't know. The postman's hell, sleet, storm, sleet, whatever it is. It's nothing that's going to separate you from the love of God. It's very parallel to this. If you think about all the things that God has listed, that there's nothing that can come between you and his love. But then flip it. If you were to say, nothing can come between me and my love for God, not death, hell, angels, demons, wealth, poverty, nothing can come between my love for God. Yep. That's different. I can think of no way in which God has ever failed me. That's right. But I can think of hundreds of ways I failed him. Song of Solomon is meant to be understood on two levels. Yes, it celebrates human love and intimacy, but it also points to humanity's ultimate purpose. We were created to have love and intimacy with God and follow his wisdom, allowing us to be united with him. Have you ever prayed to have the heart of God? Have you ever prayed to love people like God does? Oh. I prayed one time, God, let the things that hurt you hurt me. I quickly asked him to reverse that. I couldn't take it. I couldn't, because I was just, like, my soul couldn't handle it. It didn't last very long. It just didn't. So we become, when we finally search and find our intimacy with God, we will become wise rulers of our own selves and of our world. That's why the Song of Solomon ends with the bride and the bridegroom united in love and intimacy in a garden filled with trees. Solomon 8:13 says, "Thou dwellest in the gardens, the companions hearken to thy voice. Cause me to hear it." Okay, let me rephrase that. The other people hear your voice. They have the honor of getting to hear what you say. I want to hear it too. Me. Smile on me. Let me hear your voice. Let me see your ways. Let me know what you want. Jesus is the bridegroom. We are the bride. And he paid for this wedding. He paid for the church. He paid for you with his blood. That's in Acts 20 and 28. He reversed the curse that fell many years ago under the tree in the Garden of Eden by taking that curse on himself when he died on the tree at Calvary. You will not find a greater love.
Right.
You won't. Human love is beautiful, and when it's done in the sight of God, it is even more beautiful, and it can be absolutely amazing, but it will never hold a light to the relationship that God wants to have.
Right.
Yep, that's right.
Somebody said that humans' desire, their greatest desire, is to be truly known for who they are and loved.
Yeah.
Humans' greatest fear is to be truly known for who they are and loved. It's amazing that those two things go hand in hand. But there will never be a person that will know you and love you like your Creator.
Amen.
And if you really want to see a worshiper, find someone who understands the love of God. You don't have to fake it.
Hallelujah.
Right.
You don't have to make yourself worship when you realize how much God loves you.
That's right.
That's true.
It overflows. And you know what happens when there's true love? I'm going to be real plain for just a second. When you have real godly love and true God-intended intimacy and worship, babies are born.
That's true. That's true.
If there's no babies, it makes you wonder where the intimacy is.
Oh, Jesus, help us, Lord.
That's extra.
Help us, Lord.
Ultimately, obeying God's word and following his wisdom allows us to go into heaven, where his Garden of Eden is all over again. It's going to start over, this time for all eternity. That's the goal, is to get us back into the place like it started in creation. But why wait until then?
Right.
Why wait until you make it to heaven? It is vitally important that we find that intimate relationship with God here on earth.
Oh, Jesus.
And when you find that, worship's different. Services are different.
Yeah.
Reading his word is different.
Yeah.
It's not something you have to do so you can check off your daily bread, whatever. It's, oh, I've got a love letter from God. Let me see what he said today. It's different. It's different.
Yeah.
I have something I want to share with you. Y'all just bear with me. I was on a roll today. Because I started thinking about all of these love songs that we sing to God and some that we just don't seem to think would work. And if God is the perfect example of where a relationship should be, now we're not going to be singing these in worship service, but what if we saw God like he's presented in the Song of Solomon, seeking his love, running through the hills, can't wait to get back to see her, to hold her? What if our relationship was as God had intended it? So I want to share something really quick. We've got exactly enough time. Go ahead, Nick. I want her to play something from Bishop Love. Go ahead.
If God is love, then everything about God and his church and his people are love. From the sermons that we preach, the songs that we sing. So even now, we take love songs, not songs about making love, but love songs, and we convert them to reach an audience again that would be able to understand it. And now we sing love songs to God, which is really worship. So if you see somebody that's a real worshiper, you also see somebody who understands the concept of love. So we take the love songs that we will do, even some of them today, to let people know that it's okay to talk about love in church.
Some people who want it all. I don't want nothing at all. It ain't you, Jesus. I got you, Jesus. Come on. Some people want diamond rings, but everything means nothing. Don't act like you won't know it. Come on. Some people want it all. Just point and say, if it ain't you, Jesus, I ain't got you. Some people want diamond rings, but everything means nothing. I ain't got you. Now some of y'all mad, but tell your neighbor it all depends upon who you're singing to. I'm saved, as Paul said, more saved than you all. But sometimes when I get in a situation, you know, if God is love and I'm a worshiper, I need a good love song to let God know how much I love him. And if all love music is of God, then sometimes I just tell the Lord, always and forever, each moment with you. Come on, y'all know it's just like a dream that somehow came true. I know tomorrow will still be the same. But all you need is a flashlight right now. Come on, because we've got that won't ever change. Lift your hands and say, every day, every. Love me your own special way. Melt all my heart away with a smile. Come on, take time, take. You really care. And we'll share to break heaven. It all depends upon who you see. I remember one time I backslid. I quit going to church. I wasn't thinking about you. I got tired of all the hypocrites in church. So I said, I'm gonna stay home. Watch TV, but then remember my mama say, boy, you gotta go to church. Okay, I'm gonna go back, but I'm gonna go and sit way in the back. I'm gonna come and get a word and I'm gonna leave. Oh man, but when I got in, the praise was good and worship was good, the word was good. I couldn't think of a song to make me, make that work. So I just told the Lord, I was a fool to ever leave your side. Me minus you is such a lonely ride. That breakup we had has made me lonesome and sad. I realize I love you and I want you back. Hey, hey. Come on, read. There's one perfect fit. And Jesus, this one, we both are so. Ow! It all depends upon. 2 Samuel chapter 19. I'm just glad to be saved. I'm just glad to be saved. Sometimes, now truth of the matter, aren't you surprised sometimes with you in church and having fun? I told the Lord the other day, never would have thought in a million years I would be here. Amen. Oh, 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 oh. Oh. I done lost so many of y'all now, you know. Jesus keep. Come on back, mother. Come on now. Me. Somebody say, yeah, that's church there now. There are precious fountain. Oh, to the healing flow from Freeze Mountain. Come on, we gonna go to church. We might as well go. Hey, keep me. I wanna stay near. Be my glory, my glory, my glory. Hey, oh, my raptured soul, my raptured soul shall rest beyond. Amen. Clap your hands. It's all good. It's all good. It's all